Let's talk about bún riêu cua, considered the original Vietnamese noodle soup. There are two main reasons why this dish is often regarded as the original, even surpassing the well-known pho. First, the noodles, known as bún, are closer to pure rice noodles compared to pho. Second, the soup uses field crabs, a valuable source of protein for Vietnamese people, as its main ingredient. The cua in bún riêu cua refers to these field crabs. Let's start with the noodles. Rice farming in Vietnam dates back to the 2nd to 3rd century BCE according to documented history, and even earlier according to oral traditions, reaching back thousands of years. As sea levels risen due to glacial melting at the end of Ice Age stopped about 10,000 years ago, salt water receded from the Red River Delta, where present-day Hanoi is located. People from the western hills descended to these lowlands and began wet rice cultivation, marking the beginning of rice farming in Vietnam. According to legend, a dragon king from the east, named Lac Long Quan, married the queen of the local hill tribe, Ao Co, and together they had 100 children. 50 of these children went down to the lower lands and pioneered agriculture. This legend also describes the Dragon King as a 4th or 5th generation descendant of Shennong, the mythical Chinese god of agriculture. This suggests that rice farming techniques may have spread westward from the Yangtze River Basin, one of the cradles of global rice cultivation. With rice farming sustained over a long period, from at least 2,000 or 3,000 years to 4,000 or 5,000 years, rice quickly became a staple food for the Vietnamese people. Additionally, due to the abundance of tropical sunlight and rain, double cropping is standard, and in some regions, triple cropping is possible. This abundant production allowed for various experiments with rice. As a result, in Vietnam, traditions developed where rice was used not only for cooking rice and making cakes, but also for creating various noodles and desserts. Among these, bún is considered the most original Vietnamese rice noodle. Unlike pho, for which tapioca starch is mixed to achieve a chewy texture, bún is made from 100% rice, yet retains a firm, springy texture. This is possible due to a unique manufacturing process refined over a long time. First, when making rice flour, the rice is soaked in water for 3 to 4 hours to absorb enough moisture, then ground with water using a millstone. In other words, rather than creating rice flour, a rice slurry is made. After draining the water, the remaining paste-like substance is divided into 2 portions. It is not an exaggeration to say that the essence of Vietnamese noodle making starts with this division. Using the same paste, one half is cooked into a thick porridge and then cooled before being mixed with the other half of raw paste to create the dough. To make the noodles from this dough, let's compare the process with making wheat flour dough. While wheat is ground dry and then mixed with water to make dough, bún dough is made by soaking rice in water, grinding it into a slurry, and then filtering it. This ensures that the dough retains as much of the rice's natural stickiness as possible, which might otherwise be lost during the powdering process. Cooking a half of the paste into porridge is a process that maximizes the stickiness through the chemical changes in the starch when heat is applied. Using the remaining half as raw paste ensures that the dough produces sturdy noodles that don't break easily and maintain a dense, cohesive structure. When making noodles from this dough, the noodle press is placed over a pot of boiling water. This allows the noodles to cook quickly, for about 1 minute, ensuring they are fully cooked. They are then rapidly cooled in cold water, which creates noodles that are both chewy and firm, reminiscent of Korean cold noodles.
Vietnamese bún is thought to be a localized version of the Chinese term pan, which refers to rice noodles. This suggests that it is a food that came from southern China along with rice cultivation techniques. However, considering rice noodles an imported foreign culture to Vietnam in the aspect of modern national concept might be a stretch. It is more reasonable to view rice noodles as part of the shared dietary practices among people in the same agricultural culture, since the ancestors of Vietnamese people used to live in areas extending into parts of present-day Guangxi and Guangdong provinces in China. In any case, unlike the flat pho, bún noodles are round. While pho can be made into dried noodles for long-term storage, bún is made fresh and must be consumed on the same day. It seems surprising how this was possible in the old days without refrigerators in the humid and hot climate. However, observing the Vietnamese people today, who prepare fresh food for every meal without leftovers, it is clear that their wisdom in matching the number of people to the amount of food is deeply ingrained in their daily life. This cultural habit explains the tradition of fresh, wet noodles. Having examined the noodles, let's now discuss the broth and the solid ingredients. Vietnamese broths, unlike Korean bone broth or Chinese morning soup, which are simmered for days to extract the deep flavors of the ingredients, do not possess such intense depth. Instead, Vietnamese broths create subtle and complex flavors through the combination of a huge variety of ingredients and spices, in line with characteristics of tropical cuisine. However, unlike Thai or Malaysian cuisine, Vietnamese broths are known for their simplicity and clean taste. The broth of Bún Rieu Quoa, in addition to being subtle and clean, also incorporates fermented fish sauce to provide that umami flavor. The primary ingredient for the broth, field crabs, are thoroughly cleaned, ground whole, and then strained to obtain the crab water. This crab water is boiled, and the floating scum is skimmed off to make crab paste cakes for garnish, while the remaining water serves as the base for the noodle broth. Into this crab water, pork trotters are added after a quick blanching to remove impurities and odor, and then simmered until tender. Vietnamese fish sauce, nuoc mam, and fermented shrimp paste, mam dam, are added for seasoning and to enhance the flavor. Nuoc mam is similar to garam in Roman Empire, while mam dam is a fermented shrimp paste. Another essential ingredient is the tomato. Similar to making pasta sauce, tomatoes are lightly sautéed to enhance their natural sweetness and acidity, then added to the broth as the pork trotters are cooking. This process balances the strong umami flavors of the crab paste and fermented shrimp paste with the richness of the pork bones and meat, creating a thicker flavor. The sautéed tomatoes add a refreshing accent to the broth, completing the flavor profile. This accent not only emphasizes the taste but also serves as a marker in the history of Vietnamese cuisine. The field crab, which provided essential protein to the Vietnamese people by crawling in the wet rice paddies for thousands of years, eventually met the richness of pork due to increased social productivity. In the mid-19th century, when the French introduced tomatoes to colonial Indochina, this ingredient further upgraded the flavor of the broth, marking another evolution in the history of Vietnamese food. Looking at the solid ingredients simmered in the broth all day, we can also see a glimpse of Vietnam's culinary history at the crossroads of Eastern and Western cultures, developing its own unique flavors. For example, tofu, which became localized under 1,000 years of Chinese rule, is cut into large chunks, lightly fried, and then simmered in the broth to absorb the flavors. The tomato, introduced during a century of French colonization, is used both in the broth and as a garnish after being cooked down to a mush. Congealed pig's blood is also simmered in the broth until fully cooked. Finally, a crab cake made entirely from crab meat and set with eggs is placed atop the noodles for the final touch. Both in quantity and nutritional value, Bún Rieu Quoa makes for a complete meal, which is why modern Vietnamese often enjoy it for lunch or dinner. How about making a note of this dish for your next trip to Vietnam? It will be an excellent introduction to expanding your horizons of Vietnamese cuisine. One thing to be cautious of is that many street food stalls simply advertise Bún Rieu. Be sure to check if quoa is included. Bún Rieu Quoa is a specific type of the broader category of Bún Rieu noodles, distinguished by its use of field crab. Street versions of Bún Rieu that lack quoa in the name usually derive their flavor from shrimp paste and pork, not field crab. This is the end of our episode today. Enjoy Bún Rieu Quoa.